Hey friends, Frodo has pulled out another batch of emails for us, but before we get into them, there's something I wanted to go over real quick. In that short one that I put out last night, Gypsy talked about seeing the word pain on Dee Dee's arm. And Gypsy's claim is that, Dee Dee put it there herself with a K-N-I-F-E. And scars like that generally take years and years and a lot of effort to fade. I would expect a scar like that to still be there and be noted on the autopsy, and we don't see it there, friends. Also, she said that that was on Dee Dee's forearm. Well, we see Dee Dee wearing short sleeve muumuus all the time. Normally, whenever someone has a scar like that, the usual thing is try to hide it with longer sleeves and stuff like that because they're so prominent. If y'all know of anything I'm not thinking of here, please feel free to let me know in the comments. And then also in the Reddit post where Lil Frodo put this up, I was looking in the comments and a Reddit user named Salt in the Shade made this comment. They said, I've been racking my brain for a while about that part of the book because the story sounded so familiar. They're talking about the pain written into Dee Dee's arm. It says, I think I finally figured out where I heard it before. It's from the book Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl. It's also been made into a mini series on HBO with Amy Adams. Basically, it's about a true crime detective who has dealt with loads of trauma and is unable to cope. So she self HARMs by carving words into her body. I don't remember at the moment if pain was one of the words, but I wouldn't be surprised. I read the book a long time ago, but I recall the book having MBP in it too, and it is also set in Missouri, which makes it extremely likely to me that Jip has read Sharp Objects and she probably stole a narrative from the book or show. Now, I haven't read that book, but I thought we would pop over to the book's Wikipedia for a rundown. Listen, friends, oh my God. I think Salt in the Shade is really onto something here. Okay, Wikipedia says Sharp Objects is a 2006 debut novel by Gillian Flynn. And then we get to the plot. And listen, friends, Camille Preaker works as a journalist at the Daily Post, a small newspaper in Chicago. She is dissatisfied with her job, which involves covering stories about crime and human suffering. Camille has a complicated relationship with her boss, who supported her after a recent hospitalization for self harm. She has a history of carving words into her skin. Curry assigns her to cover the case of a murdered girl and a missing child in her fictional hometown of Wind Gap, Missouri. She stays with her estranged mother, Adora, her stepfather, Alan, and half sister, Amma, in Adora's Victorian mansion. Adora is the heiress to the town's central industry of pork farming. I'm going to skip some that's kind of unrelated, in my opinion. And down here it says, as Camille continues her investigation, she enters into a sexual relationship with Richard, but avoids revealing her scars. She also grows closer to Amma, who takes her to a party where they drink and use drugs. Afterward, Camille wakes to find her mother giving her medication, which makes her ill. Camille soon realizes that Adora suffers from factitious disorder imposed on another and was responsible for Marion's death. A letter from a nurse who cared for Marion confirms these suspicions. Camille also learns that Richard suspects Adora of murdering the two local girls. Camille returns to her mother's house where Adora poisons her and tries to care for her. Camille passes out but is rescued when Richard and the police arrive to arrest her mother. Richard is shocked by Camille's scars and their relationship ends. Adora is charged with the murders of Marion, Ann Nash, and Natalie Keene. Amma is sent to live with Camille in Chicago. Initially, Amma seems to adjust well, but after a classmate is found murdered with 6 of her teeth pulled, it is revealed that Amma was responsible for the murders of Anne and Natalie. Jealous of the attention Adora gives to the victims, she killed the girls. Amma is arrested. Distraught, Camille resumes self harming, but is stopped by Curry and his wife, who take her in as their own daughter. There's a lot of weird similarities there, friends, to a lot of the stories that Gypsy has told, especially about Dee Dee's mom actually being murdered, like stuff that's never been able to be confirmed. So anyway, I wanted to put that out there and see what y'all think about it, friends, because whenever I saw Salt in the Shades comment and started looking into that book, I was like, oh, holy hell, that might be where she got the story. Okay, moving on to the emails. I'll give my usual disclaimer. These emails were obtained through the Freedom of Information Act and the Missouri Sunshine Law. All prisoner communications are subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. And here is Lil Ferdo's description. It says the emails are all over the place, but they are from Ryan's timeline. Lil Ferdo thinks most of these are to either people are from the book publisher, like her ghostwriter, and some appear to be directly from Melissa Moore or to Melissa Moore. For anyone unfamiliar, Melissa Moore's father is the happy face killer, Keith Jesperson, a serial killer. And like I mentioned before, Melissa Moore went on Oprah and Dr. Phil to get their advice about how to deal with the fact that her father was a serial killer. They told her to stay cut off from him. But before she took their advice, she took her children to visit him in prison and, by her own words out of her own mouth, tried to play happy family. And this is after Melissa Moore's grandfather told her, again, according to Melissa Moore's words, that her dad confessed to his dad, Melissa Moore's grandfather, that he was thinking about killing Melissa and her siblings. She still took her children to meet him, friends. Weird. Okay, anyway, back to Lil Frodo's description. Lil Frodo says it's possible these could all be Melissa Moore, but it's hard to say because Gypsy talks similar to all the production and book people. Some of these emails, okay, that was the end of Little Frodo's description. Some of these emails we have read before whenever I was reading different chunks of the OG doc, but they're still very interesting in this context of being all grouped together by subject. Okay, so the first one we have is Outbound from Gypsy. And she says, "Hey, Blank. So Blank and I decided to take a week to ourselves to decompress after a stressful last week and a half. He and I agreed not to concern ourselves with the filming issues for 1 week. We both are kind of overstressed with the whole thing, and it has taken away some of our joy coming off our wedding. We have been so worked up over the issues concerning my interview. Blank will soon receive 3 emails from me sent 3 separate days last week expressing that I do not feel comfortable doing recordings just yet, to try and send another crew, and if it fails, then I'll do the recordings, which, come on, would only take maybe 2 or 3 days worth of phone calls to get it done. It's not like back then when I had to wait an hour to call back. I let the anger in and out. Now I feel almost numb. I spoke with Blank about what is more important, fighting for money for him or fighting to give our best, truest form of who we are to make this documentary reflect our lives, because I need to know where to go from here. Maybe both is worth it in Blank's case. I'm on pause right now, but I know I can't push it off forever. I stand strong where I need to, but strategic moves are not my strong point. Neither is it Blank's. We want the success of the film, but the question is, how much do we give and how much to hold back? I kind of figure if Blank still has material, we can use that material for a possible post documentary and his own contract to be drawn up to ensure his own earnings. Anywho, I just wanted to let you know if Blank reaches out wondering why I'm not calling her this week, I'm taking a much needed pause to have 1 week to focus on myself and being there for Blank as he starts teaching students. Thank you for supporting us. Sending big hugs, Gypsy Rose." Okay, there's a lot to commentate on there, obviously, friends. But what stuck out to me, first of all, was her saying that she sent 3 emails on 3 different days saying that she doesn't feel comfortable doing recordings yet, to try and send another crew. If it fails, then she'll do the recordings. That is so weird because she says that the recordings would only take 2 or 3 days worth of phone calls and it would be no big deal. But she is refusing to do the recordings unless they try and send another crew and it fails. Now, I think this is after the first crew they sent. One of the dudes had like CBD in his pocket or something, CBD gummies or vapes or something or other. And so they weren't allowed to enter the prison. And Gypsy was pretty pissed because it seems to me, friends, that a real issue here with wanting them to get a crew in and not do the recordings is obviously she wants to be on camera. And then the next part is weird again. I assume she's got to be talking about Ryan here. Lil Frodo said this is within Ryan's timeline, and she also talks about how they're just coming off their wedding, and so that's got to be Ryan. But she says, "I spoke with him about what is more important, fighting for money for him or fighting to give our best, truest form of who we are." And then she says, "Maybe both is worth it in Blank's case." So it sounds to me like since maybe Ryan wasn't there in the beginning, they had to fight and negotiate to get him paid. Is that how y'all are taking it, friends? Crime Ryan wanted that revenue. But then overall, it's just hilarious to me. She always acts like she's so freaking stressed out in prison, sitting there just reading her emails, friends. You know what I mean? She's like, I need to be here to focus on myself and support Ryan. Like, oh, you're going to take some phone calls and listen to him vent. Good God. Then the next page is definitely outbound from Gypsy to Melissa Moore. You'll see why in just a moment, friends. Outbound from Gypsy. Aw, thank you. I know you must be feeling the nerves as well, but they are the good kind of nerves. I just had a weekend visit with Blink, and we were just talking about how long you and I have been in contact with each other and how you have been a friend to me and my family. I have always felt comfortable talking with you about my life, where with others I'd close off. I want you to know that me, Blink, and my parents all feel close to you. Back in 2019, when you first told me about your dad, I had not known anything about his cases. It wasn't until years later that there was more TV movies and documentaries about it, and my first thought was, she gets it. To have a parent who is not the best ideal version of a parent. She's comparing Dee Dee. I'm breaking in here to say, friends, she's comparing Dee Dee to Melissa Moore's serial killer dad as she herself sits in prison for murder. Wow. Okay, back to Gypsy's email. Maybe it was that fact that made me open up, or maybe it was you being genuine, or both. I just know that if I was going to open up to the world, it would first have to start with someone I can trust. I'm going into my 8th year in prison, and there are many things that have changed since I was with my mom, many of which I didn't know how to do before, and now I have a lot coming at me at once. I often ask questions most my age would already know, but feel no shame in asking anymore. Blank was who I called 6 times a week the first few years of my sentence. Then I started learning on my own what was right and wrong for myself. I was on a phone call with my dad on Father's Day, and we were talking about the July wedding ceremony. And I told him that if I end up feeling like I made a mistake, I'll be okay because I've made many mistakes while in prison, but I don't regret any of them. I grew from them. I know people will have their own vision of what they would do if given my circumstances, but they forget that I'm just a person making choices as they once did. And if it's wrong, then I'll learn and make better choices in the future. Everyone is guilty of wanting to stir my direction of choices, and that is okay. I just don't want anyone to have hurt feelings if I don't follow what they would do. And I felt like maybe I hurt your feelings when I decided not to wait to marry Blank. I understand that we had a misunderstanding when we talked about filming storylines and such, but neither I nor Blank are upset. Blank had questions in the heat of the moment, chose to talk to Blank about it rather than you, and it was mainly to ask, would getting married now hurt the project any? And she said no, and that was the end of it. I just don't want you to feel like there's any upset feelings between us because there isn't. We love you and enjoy working on all this together. Now, on another note, what does your wedding dress look like? Smile. Give me all the girly details. Smile. Yeah, if I remember right, friends, Melissa Moore even had a little dust up with Gypsy at one point because she thought Gypsy was making crazy, rash decisions in prison and not doing, the things that she should do to take care of herself. Then we have another outbound from Gypsy, and it says, I spoke with blank blank for the first time in 6.5 years, and we had a good heart to heart. From now on, we will keep in touch. She said she reserved herself all this time because she didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable or remind me of the past. And I had reserved myself because I knew the situation hurt a lot of people, and I wanted to give her a space to heal and cope. I gave her my blessing to be interviewed and made her more comfortable with the documentary. I also got the chance to tell her how sorry I am for not coming to her with the troubles of my home life. She also apologized for not recognizing things. It was a beautiful understanding. I assume that's one of her Petri ants, but I don't know, friends. And then this next page has some inbounds and outbounds. Outbound from Gypsy, she says, I understand. I was never evaluated by Mr. Blank. I believe he was appointed to Blank. However, if he wishes to be interviewed, I have no reservations. I won't take any legal action against him if he agrees to interview. Then this one, I'm not sure if this next one is inbound or outbound. It says, let me know when the financial aspects are secure and just how much to talk about with Blank. Has Blank spoken with the attorney? I think that was from Gypsy because then there's a reply that says, yes, Blank spoke to attorney. You can talk to Blank and if it's safe to, as it's not recorded. I'd recommend approving recording filming only after lawyers okay. Also, will you give me written permission for blank blank to interview for doc? She wants your blessing. And then this one is outbound from Gypsy. It says, Blank, I am glad things are going well with our documentary. I am setting up a time with Blank to call her on a regular and let me know when you want to start with our weekly calls. Also, I absolutely give Blank Blank my blessing to be interviewed for our documentary. She was very close to my mother, and I believe her voice should be heard no matter her opinion of me. That is the point of this documentary to let everyone have a chance to share their own experience. By doing this, I hope to bring a humanity to my mother's memory. No one is all bad, and I think in other films there was too much focus on showcasing her as a villain when it isn't so black and white. And I want the public to. So far, I'm really impressed with how this is all being handled, and I'm glad to have you on this project. Stay safe on your travels. Once again, friends, Gypsy would be much better off with her public image had she maintained that stance on Dee Dee. Then outbound from Gypsy. It's crazy, but I am just now getting the videograms you sent me last May. You have a lovely home. Smile. Has there been any talk about a book title? And then at the very bottom, I think this is what she was responding to in that first email. It says blank blank PhD. This is the psychologist who testified and worked with blank blank. He is asking for something from you, saying if he interviews, you won't sue him. I'm thinking if you could send you an email, then I can forward it to him. Whoever this is writing, I don't think it's Melissa Moore because they have terrible grammar. Oh, this is funny. Gypsy says, I'm already making a list of jobs I find interesting. The new features also allow me to rent movies, and OMG, there is a huge selection to choose from. Smile. Okay, then we have another outbound from Gypsy. And now this one I've read before, but it didn't hit the same way because Gypsy had not yet announced her little Alaska trip with Keen. So this is outbound from Gypsy. It says, did I ever tell you that after my first attempt to run away from home, my mother wanted us to move to Alaska? She felt the life she built in Springfield was caving in, and she was researching Habitat for Humanity homes in Alaska. However, her health took a turn when she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and for the meantime, put the possible move on hold. So, yeah, last time I talked about this, I talked about the fact that I wonder if this is where Gypsy got interested in the Northern Lights whenever Dee Dee was talking about taking them to Alaska. And also, Gypsy confirms here that in the last few years, her mom's health took a turn. It was very bad, type 2 diabetes. Well, what do y'all think, friends? I swear everything she does connects back to her life with her mom like a trophy in some way, right down to her child's name. And then outbound from Gypsy. So I have found the wonderful world of podcasts. Well, I started listening to podcasts about relationships and marriages. Oh, friends, can y'all imagine how much therapy speak she's stored up to weaponize from that? And this one says, Blink knows about our documentary. Blink told her. I don't know who Gypsy's talking about here. It could be Ryan. She could be talking about meetings with Melissa. Who knows? But it says, I'm looking at my pictures that Blink and I have taken throughout the last 6 months. And the photos from our first visit to now, the body language has changed dramatically. LOL. You can see the growth of our bond from them to now. In the first few pictures, we both have our hands to ourselves and have some distance between us. Now our photos are more intimate and affectionate. If she is talking about Melissa, it sounds like she's crushing a little bit, friends. But that's probably about Ryan. Now, this one is interesting. I wonder who else she's talking about here. She says, Blank, Blank, and Blank are all keeping at least a watchful eye on how Blank handles people asking her questions about me or other possible postings. I don't feel Blank is hateful towards me. It is Blank she is attacking. She blames Blank for this situation, and I don't know why Blank has nothing to do with it. Blank is convinced that Blank has ill intentions with me. I would appreciate pictures from my childhood and even some looking sickly. I want to show my roommates because they have only ever seen me as I am now, healthy, so it will be a shock to them. I cannot receive photos of myself in khaki prison pics, as that is one of the male rules. No photos of inmates, even if it is myself. Tongue face. Why do they need y'all to rewrite the sample chapter? Who knows who she's talking about at the beginning there? Could be Fancy, Natasha Cooper, Christy. No telling. Also, I found it interesting that she specifically requested pictures of herself looking sickly. What do y'all think about that, friends? Then Gypsy says, it is exciting to be making plans. I feel confidence in myself to be taking on this transition from prison to the outside world. I have been reading driving books. I haven't heard back from the credit report place. I sent for my credit report months ago and I haven't heard back. Can Blink possibly check online for me? I have started a workout diet plan so my body can look good and feel good coming out of prison. It's crunch time for getting into shape. And also, the fact that I am in a relationship means that my sex life is about to begin. So I'm both excited and nervous about that. LOL. Things are going really well with my parents. They are even talking about renewing their wedding vows. Smile. Wonder how long that lasts, friends. Then another outbound from Gypsy. She says, I asked staff when should blank arrive at the hearing. And since they go in alphabetical order of last name, I will most likely be the first hearing of the day. So no earlier than 8 a.m. and no later than 8:30 a.m. So at least now y'all can prepare for that moment ahead of time. I had Blank text Blank to give Blank the phone number of the victim services to register on behalf of my mother's side. Blank says he has already booked his flight and hotel and he will register with victim services next week. It will be up to the visiting staff to decide if they have the availability to allow Blank the 2-hour visit after or not. I checked to see if I had to do anything on my part for her, and they said she just has to show up at 8 a.m. at the visitor's door, tell them why she's here and my name and DOC number, and they will direct her of what to do from there. I just had a great phone call with my dad. It was nice to talk to him on the phone and talk real talk, not just the pleasantries of our daily lives. For a moment, I felt like I was the parent. LOL. Can you picture it? A woman with barely any life experience giving advice to her father who has 46 years of life experience. And I sound like a therapist who knows what she's talking about. LOL. Also, I did calm his mind and told him nothing has been talked about that concerns money from the project. He understands and explained that he was jumping to conclusions and he is emotionally frazzled. Oh, yeah, she is proud of sounding like a therapist who knows what she's talking about when giving advice to pimp juice friends. She learned that therapy speech, weaponized it. Also, it's funny, Rod is always panicking about money, it sounds like. And then we have Gypsy answering questions from someone, and she skips some numbers of questions, but Lil Frodo wasn't able to find those numbers anywhere in the emails. So it seems like she just intentionally chose not to answer some. So Gypsy says, Blank, I'm sorry I'm late writing this, but these are my answers to your questions that you sent to me on November 11th. Question one: who are the helpers and why? First being released, I will have to have a person to parole home to in order to show that I have support and someone to hold me accountable. Throughout my incarceration, it was always expected that I would parole home to my father and Blank, and that both of them would ensure that I have a safe and healthy tradition into society. She said tradition instead of transition. Okay, back to the email. Now, after learning news of their upcoming divorce, I do not know where Blank will eventually be residing, nor am I sure if either one of them will continue to live in Louisiana. However, I do know that my father continues to offer his home, wherever it may be, as a place of residence if I should choose to live with him. I also have the option to reside with a significant other, which, should my relationship with Blank continue to develop, I feel that after having a long distance relationship supported mainly through phone calls and weekend visits with him, and without physically being intimate, I really want to at least try to get a joint apartment, live with this person, get a feel if this person is who I want as my partner. And if, in the case, I live with him and I don't see it working out, then I can call my parole officer and have him or her change my place of residence to my father. So I'm not obligated to stay in any residence I don't feel comfortable living. Okay, we're only halfway through the email, but I'm breaking in here to say, friends, we have all speculated before that she was lying to Ryan and Kian both because she told them that she had to be married to Home Plan. She's admitting here she didn't. So that was another lie, friends. We can just chalk it up, another lie. Wonder if Kian or Ryan realizes that was a lie. We were wondering that before if they ever looked it up because we looked it up. I checked with Amber from Into the Weeds, who has a cousin in Chillicothe, and several of y'all in the comments who have experienced it being an inmate in prison or with family members, etc., who are inmates in prison, said, no, you don't have to be married to Home Plan. Well, Jip even confirmed it here. Now, friends, she was lying all along. Okay, back to her email. She says, aside from my living arrangements, I will need the emotional support of Blank, my best friend, Blank Blank, my brother Blank, sister Blank, and a few other close friends who have stayed loyal throughout my journey. I will need the overall support from Blank as my partner to be someone I can lean on when initially getting out. I do not need to be dependent and have someone do everything for me. What I do need is a guide to show me how something is done so that I can do it independently. And this applies to both Blank and my father or anyone who is my support. I will need to be driven from place to place before I apply for driving lessons. So Blank or my father will have to take on the responsibility of making sure I arrive at my PO on time, which should be a few days after my release. If no one drives me and I have no way to get to my PO, I get a parole violation and get sent back to prison. Having someone drive me to and from where I need to go is very important. It doesn't necessarily have to be Blank, my father, or anyone I know specifically. Anyone can take me to my parole officer appointment. It just needs to be a ride to get there and back. But I'd prefer if it was someone trustworthy and who knows what's at stake if I don't make it there on time. Basically, the support I get will be from whoever is the most active participants in my life around the time of my release. If Blank and I are no longer in a relationship, then that changes the dynamics of that option. If after my father and Blank divorce, he chooses to move out of the state, that may change my decision to reside with him. Only time will tell where these paths lead. My expectations are to have support from my family and friends, but then once I know how to drive and am taught how to do the basics and start employment, I will want my own car, my own routine, my own way of living. Seems like there might be more to the email because it says version of me without initial support at the bottom. But I wonder if she actually understood this question right, because whenever I read the question, who are the helpers and why? I think about, Mr. Rogers talking about how in any time of disaster, look for the helpers who is helping, rescue workers, EMTs, firemen, those types of things, the helpers. Well, Gypsy went straight to herself, and maybe that is what it was actually about, but I just wonder which one of us is misunderstanding the question, friends? And the next one, I'm going to skip. It's number 3. It's what does true love look like, feel like, and what does it provide? Only skipping it because my last GRB video was reading this email and comparing it to the page in her book that little Frodo noticed. So I'll put a link to that video in the description if anyone wants to know about this particular email. The next one is question number 4. It says, beliefs about security and safety. How do I achieve it? And Gypsy says, while in prison, I must rely on my intuition of who I think might wish to cause me harm emotionally and physically and simply avoid these individuals. When I am home, I will be able to purchase a home security system. I will also want to take self defense classes to protect myself, even if I am alone. Because I have a lack of trust in other people when it comes to my safety and overall well being. I like to take control of my own safety rather than my safety be in someone else's hands. What triggers me being scared? Loud noises, crowds, confrontational arguments, feeling unsure how to do something, not being in control of a situation. What do I fear most? In terms of safety, I fear someone will want to hurt or kill me because they are obsessed with me. I've had a few disturbed individuals post things on social media about me, and they seem far too interested in my life to be non threatening towards me. I fear someone wanting to harm my family because they have a negative opinion about me and the crime I have committed, so they make threats on my loved ones. I fear if I have children that they will be targeted in a negative way, not only for their safety, but subjected to bullying by other children because of my past and my black mark as a murderer. What makes me feel safe the most? Being in control of my surroundings, the emotional comfort given by a loved one, the knowledge that if I don't like a situation, I can leave and find a safe place. I highly doubt she's taken any self-defense classes, and she totally wants everyone else to fight for her and be her safety. Also, we've seen her gravitate to loud noises and crowds over and over and over upon release. So, yeah, weird. Now, you think if someone was actually worried that someone would want to kill them because they're obsessed with them, that that person would take precautions and not constantly live stream their location. Like, oh, we're in this airport, we're at this bar, whatever. You know what I mean, friends? What do y'all think? It's also interesting that she says she fears that if she has children, they will be targeted in a negative way, not only for their safety, but bullying by other children. She actually said bullying because of her past and her black mark as a murderer. I don't understand why someone chooses to have children knowing that. It feels like a very selfish act. Am I right or am I reaching there, friends? If I'm reaching, that's okay to let me know in the comments. Now, this one is inbound to Gypsy, and it says, I'm starting to have discussions with the show for money for everything. I'll be talking to Blink in the upcoming week or two. Wanted to give you a heads up. Also, I saw Renee Zellweger will play Blank Blank. There are pictures of her on set wearing a fat suit to look like her in New Orleans. Did Pam sign on for this project? You have my permission to give her my cell phone, and she can message me. I have a production company who would sign her for her interview. I'd use the same camera crew I brought for your filming. They're really nice people. There's another line, but that one's too cut off to read. Sometimes I can still tell what they say if they're cut off, but this one's too much so. And then in the last email, Gypsy gives a list of hospitals and doctors she remembers. And I'm sure it's highly inaccurate because it's coming from Gypsy, but let's just go through it and see what she says about it, friends. She says, list of hospitals: Children's Hospital in New Orleans, Louisiana, 1991 through 2005. Tulane Medical Center, New Orleans, Louisiana, roughly 1996 through 2005. Oceaner Hospital, New Orleans, 1995 through 2005. Charity Hospital, New Orleans, 1991 through question mark, didn't go much there. Slidell Memorial Hospital, Slidell, Louisiana, 2003 through 2005. St. John's Mercy Hospital, Springfield, Missouri, 2006 through 2015. Mercy Hospital, Stratford, Missouri, 2014 and 15. Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City, 2007 through 2015. UMKC School of Dentistry Special Care Unit Oncology Department, Kansas City, Missouri, 2010 through 2015. Cox Health Center, Springfield, Missouri, 2012 through 2015. Seen multiple times in the ER, she notes. Interesting that she mentions the oncology department because oncology is treatment, research, and prevention of cancer. It's hard to imagine any oncology department taking her in unless they could actually confirm something, friends? Okay, Gypsy says list of remembered doctors seen. Dr. Robert Beckerman. We all remember him, don't we, friends? Pulmonology Department at Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City, Missouri. Dr. Robert Steele, pediatric specialist, St. John's Hospital, Springfield. Dr. Juan Baptiste Lepichon, Neurology Department at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. Dr. Horry, Dermatology Department at Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City. Dr. Alphin, Ear, Nose, and Throat, St. John's, Springfield. She says he did the surgical procedure on my neck to remove my salivary glands. I remember whenever we looked at those records, friends, I don't think they didn't remove all of them, obviously, but anyway, I'd have to go back and look. Dr. Growl, Dental Department at Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City. Dr. Flasserstein, Neurology Department at St. John's Mercy Hospital, I believe seen in 2007. Dr. Wisdom, Ear, Nose, and Throat Specialist at Tulane, New Orleans, roughly around 2004. Dr. Dixix, Pediatric Specialist at Slidell Memorial Hospital, 2004. Dr. Susan Heasley, Mercy Hospital, Stratford, 2014-15. She says, I was also seen at Children's Mercy Hospital, cardiology and asthma allergy departments, but I can't remember the doctors. So what do y'all think of that batch, friends? I can't stop laughing about the fact that we finally have her admitting that she did not have to be married to Home Plan. It didn't have to be parents or a husband or wife. It was easily able to be a significant other, and she actually planned on that with Ryan at one point until she got an impulse to make Kian jealous and decided to marry him in there. Almost blew up our little show. Anyway, we will go out with a palate cleanser, friends. I hope everyone's having a good day. Let me know what y'all think in the comments.